Laura, could you introduce yourself briefly and tell us about the key objectives of your research in the area of emotional intelligence?
Thank you for the opportunity, sure. My name is Laura Artusio. I'm a psychologist and a European PhD from University of Florence, and I had the honor to found a laboratory called PERLab, Psychology, Emotions and Research Laboratory of the incubator of University of Florence in partnership with the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence. So our three supervisors are Professor Peter Salovey, Mark Brackett and David Caruso from Yale University. I'm very happy about that. And so we do research in different fields of psychology with a special focus on emotional intelligence, on the ability model of Meyer and Salovey from 1997, in different fields, for instance, in workplaces. We did a study in hospital and helicopter aviation setting, but also we are going to apply a ruler approach in schools, so emotional intelligence in different settings. Thank you.
Okay. So the research that you've done with helicopters, could you tell us a little bit about what you found out about the relationship between stress and emotional intelligence?
Yes, sure. Emotional intelligence do have correlations with stress. In particular, in the four-branch model of emotional intelligence that we use, the fourth branch, managing emotions in yourself and in other, is particularly related with stress. So if you are better to manage emotions, you can better tolerate stress, or you are more able to modify situations. And this is particularly important, for instance, in case of conflicts, crisis, as we are in this moment, maybe, or when the company is merging, for instance, is in the path of a big change. This is particularly important to take in consideration emotions. So, for us, emotions are data, and to integrate those kind of data in the everyday life, work life too, is critical. Because as a leader, for instance, maybe you need to create new ideas, to motivate people, to create a team. And so this is better to get performance at an age goal. But also in case of crisis, of emergency, to be able to manage emotions in particular can be critical. And this is what we found with a study on pilots, helicopter pilots. So I did have the chance to interview 9 pilots who survived in case of crisis. So some of them had accidents, and there was also the loss of life for someone, not of the pilots who survived and did the interview, but some of those cases were very serious. And this is particularly interesting, according to me, because we realized from the literature that the 85% of accidents in the aviation sector is due to human factor. So it's generally called human factor, and inside this human factor, the emotions get a very important role. And this is what we found also in our qualitative analysis of the interview. We did an interview based on the ability model of emotional intelligence. So the frame was the four-branch models of emotional intelligence. And so we took in consideration the emotions of the pilot before, during, and after the crisis event, the accidents in many cases. And this was very interesting because we saw that in many cases, the emotions do have a main role in the dynamic. Maybe the pilots felt the pressure of the time. Maybe the organization was not that good and so felt anxiety. Or maybe in some cases, like an emergency, was carrying a child 3 years old to the hospital, and he had a child 3 years old. So the emotion of the pilot could have an influence in the dynamic. So we know that emotions impact cognitive processes like thought. They do have an adaptive role, but sometimes this could be an element of disturb in some cases. So the goal is to maintain the adaptive role of emotions, also in case of emergencies. So some of the strategies that those pilots used were, for instance, very adaptive. In some cases, they could have like active coping strategies because they were able to do something. And so, for instance, self-talk was interesting. In particular, one case when the pilot realized that his self-talk was negative. Like, I'm going to die, for sure I'm going to die. And then he stopped and he said, no, it's like, I know the procedure, calm yourself. It's like a self-talk, can be critical to better have more chance to get out of the situation. Or in other cases, the pilot was not able to do anything because the command was blocked. So he couldn't do like an active coping strategy, and he do like another kind of strategies like training autogeno. So he said it's like automatically from the sport I did when I was a young sportive student, and I tried to relax myself when the helicopter was going down fast. And so this can help, for instance, in that case when he crashed, but not there was a tree. So in some cases, when he was not that panic, he was able to find the exit. So that can be very important, very concrete application, I think, of how to develop those kind of skills, which can be developed with serious training. We propose pair work in our laboratory PERLab. We have the psychology, emotions, research in workplaces training, both for everyday work life, like we did in the hospital, both in case of emergency, like for the helicopter study. And we think that pair work, for instance, integrated in the regular training. For instance, we did this in the Hello Dunker simulation, which is crash landing in the swimming pool simulation. We don't, of course, substitute the training on emotional intelligence with a technical path to survive in case of land crashing, but we integrate pair work to better achieve this goal. And I have to say, I personally did the simulation and in the swimming pool as a passenger, and it's scary. Even if you know it's a simulation, you are in a swimming pool, there are like 12 steps, and the last one is like everything is dark with waves simulated, with a storm, and you turn inside in apnea, and like with 5 beds keeping you in apnea. So if you are not able to manage your emotions, to breathe, to calm yourself, you are not able probably to remember the procedure. If you invert just 2 steps of the procedure, you are probably statistical. So it does matter and can, I think, enhance the probability to prevent accidents and to react also in case of accidents. So.
Okay, lovely. And so thinking about all of those kind of things that you've explained about how being in control of your emotional intelligence makes you better able to deal with a stressful situation. If we think about it in terms of leadership, how do you apply it in that sphere? And do you have any top tips for leaders who are in stressful situations to make sure that they remain emotionally intelligent?
For instance, when we train people on emotional intelligence, we don't say it's something easy. First, we have to be honest, so it takes time. You can improve these skills, but it takes time. It's more than a brief workshop on emotional intelligence. It has to be something that you integrate in your life. It becomes like an attitude to integrate feelings in what you do and how you do things. So more than let's do a 1 hour of emotional intelligence, you want to integrate those tools that are all evidence-based to create a path, which is probably long life path. So has to be something that you do in a structured way, I would say. So for instance, for schools, we do ruler training. So we train the trainer, could be school leader, it could be administrative and teachers and also students. But the first goal, as we do also as per work in workplaces, is to give the company the tool to develop this in an independent way. So you gave them their own resources to do this in maybe 1 year, 2 years of path. And I think there are not like the 10 secrets of emotional intelligence, but as well as a training that you, first of all, as a leader, I would say if you have like a group you are coordinating, could be particularly critical and meaningful to train the leader so that as definition, has to be like a person who is able to motivate people and to be able to with the relationship. So in those emotions, again, are data, and you want to integrate those kind of information, for instance, in recognizing what people you are working with are feeling. So by their facial expression, for instance, are they disappointed? Which are their expectations? How can you motivate them? Everybody needs a meaning in their job to achieve goal, especially again in period of crisis. So as a leader, you want to share goal, maybe you want to create creative ideas to solve a problem. So those things are really critical. And for instance, let's say in the hospital, we also did in Centro Ferrero in North Italy, we work with coordinators, with the managers of both physicians and administrative, or people who could coordinate other people. And they declinate those tools, for instance, checking the mood before a meeting. So that's a way to integrate the information from emotions in what you do. Could be before a surgery, could be before a meeting, but you know that emotion matter. They do matter also on performance. So if my mood doesn't match with the task I have to take this in consideration. It could be for pilots in helicopter. Am I too angry? Did you ever experience that maybe when you are angry in your car, you are like going faster? That's before, or maybe you are not taking in consideration you make a mistake with your car, because those emotions impact cognitive process. So sometimes you just make a mistake with the street, but sometimes could have the most serious consequences. So it does matter. It's very concrete.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.